Good evening. I'll be interviewing you today, and my name is Tomi Adetayo. How would you like me to address you?
You can just call me James.
James. Okay. Where were you born?
I was born in Ardmore, Oklahoma.
Okay.
I guess I'll go ahead and give my birth date. September 8th, 1957.
Okay. What are some of your fondest memories of childhood?
My fondest memories, you might say, well, wow, you're in Maryland now. How'd you end up in Oklahoma? Well, my father was in the Air Force.
Okay.
And so when I was born into a military family. And my dad was an aircraft maintenance mechanic in the United States Air Force. What I enjoyed the most, my fondest memories of my childhood, are going from base to base with my dad when he was reassigned. As a result of him being a military guy, I got to travel a lot of places throughout the United States. And we actually lived overseas in the Philippines while I was 10 and 11 years old. We were in the Philippines. So my fondest memories of my childhood are actually going from place to place. Every time he got a new assignment, I was excited. To me, it was like a new adventure. And a lot of folks used to ask me, well, don't you hate changing schools? It was kind of hard making new friends, as a child. You know how it is when you're a child.
Having to
you have your
adjust to
friends, and then you get used to those friends. And, a couple of years, 3 years after that, your dad gets reassigned. You have to leave. But I adapted to it pretty well. I got to the point where I used to actually start looking forward, not to leaving people, but looking forward to the next adventure. Yeah.
Okay. Can we go back to your school days?
Sure. I attended kindergarten at Newbold Elementary School in Fayetteville, North Carolina.
Okay.
Even though it said elementary, it was kindergarten. And then I attended elementary school at Ferguson Elementary School in Fayetteville, North Carolina. We left there. Let me get it all straight. It's so long ago now. I just gave you my birthday a little while ago, so it's hard. I left there in third grade, and went to, where did we go then? I think he left there. We went to the Philippines. And then when we left the Philippines, I went to school on the Air Force Base in the Philippines, Clark Air Base.
Okay.
And then we left there, and we went to Delaware. And then in Delaware, I was there for 6th, 7th, and 8th grades at Dover Air Force Base in Delaware. Then we left there, and he had to go to Taiwan. And the family wasn't allowed to go there because it was what you call a remote assignment. There were no housing or facilities or anything for families. So he moved us all back to Charlotte, North Carolina, and then he had to go to Taiwan for 1 year. And during that time frame, I was in the I was in the 10th and 11th and 12th grade. No, hold on. I'm sorry.
It's okay.
I'm sorry. During that time frame in Charlotte, I was in the 10th grade. Then he came back from Taiwan, like I said, 1 year. I had to leave there after the 10th grade. I mentioned how you change schools all the time.
Often.
We moved back from Charlotte back to Fayetteville. I was in Fayetteville, North Carolina for the 11th and 12th grades, where I graduated from high school. I went out of left high school, and enrolled at Shaw University in Raleigh, North Carolina, which is an HBCU.
Okay.
I went to school there from 1975 to 1979. Got a degree in communications.
Nice.
Then I also was enrolled in the Air Force ROTC program at North Carolina State University, which is also in Raleigh. But you know how the schools have agreements. A lot of universities and colleges have cooperative agreements where if you're a student here, you can take a course over there. So to make a long story short, I took the Air Force Reserve Officer Training Corps program at North Carolina State University, even though I was a student at Shaw University. Upon graduation, I got my baccalaureate degree, and also I was commissioned into the United States Air Force as a second lieutenant.
Okay.
That same graduation day. I had to go up on stage twice.
It's a good
I went
thing,
up there and
though.
got my diploma, then I had to go back up there to get my little lieutenant bars pinned on my shoulders. So
It's a good thing. In what branch did you serve?
Air Force,
Okay.
United States Air Force, the best one.
How and why did you choose that? Because of your dad?
I think obviously the major influence on my choosing the Air Force was the fact that my dad was an Air Force guy.
Okay, so
I
he
just
played a
basically-
key part. in that.
And I didn't want to be the real tough guys. We need a few good men, the Marines. they have the reputation, and there's a need for those guys, but I didn't want to be one of those guys.
Okay.
I didn't want to go to do the Marine Corps basic training. Their basic training, I'm not saying ours is easy, but theirs is really severe.
So it's tough.
It's tough. The Marines are the toughest of the toughest basic training you can ever have to go through. Tougher than everybody's.
Wow.
So, I didn't want to be that. I wanted to serve, but I don't want to be that gung ho.
You just wanted to.
So the fact that my dad was in the Air Force and I didn't want to be a Marine, I just went, and I didn't want to be in the Army, and I didn't want to be out in the Navy. They're always out on the 90 days at a time. They're out cruising the Pacific Ocean and the Atlantic Ocean on their ships, aircraft carriers, for example, 90 days at a time. They come home for 90 days. They're out for 90 days. They come back home 90 days. They're back out on the aircraft carrier for 90 days. And, there's a need for that, but it can be rather hard on family life.
Okay. How long did you serve?
I did an actual 13 years. I got out in August of 1992. I took a buyout. At that particular time, I don't know if you know all you're young. You're young, so you probably I don't know. Were you born in 92? Were you born yet?
No.
See, that's what I figured. That's what I figured. But to make a long story short, I don't know if how abreast you are of history and Soviet Union, which is now Russia. But back then there was a Soviet Union, and there was the United States and NATO. And
Okay.
United States had its allies. Soviet Union had their allies, and back then the relationship was pretty adversarial, and I guess it's that way again now with the Ukraine situation.
Yes.
But back then it was really, really, really adversarial when I went into the Air Force. So in 92, though, shortly before 92, like I said, I don't know if you're a student of history, how much history they taught you, about the time the Berlin Wall came down. Okay, Germany used to be two Germanys. There was West Germany, there was East Germany. West Germany was allied with the United States.
Okay.
East Germany, all this happened after World War II.
Yes.
When Hitler was defeated, when World War II ended, they divided Germany in half.
Yes.
Soviet Union, Russia took East Germany into their orbit. West Germany was allied with the United States when World War II ended. That's how we ended up with two Germanys.
Okay.
Fast forward, Mikhail Gorbachev became the premier president of Russia and implemented a policy called Glasnost, which really meant democratization. He wanted the Soviet Union to have more freedoms. So as a result of him becoming the president of the Soviet Union in the late 80s, early 90s, the Berlin Wall that divided East Berlin and West Berlin was torn down. Germany reunited, became one Germany. Okay. Now, the point I'm making, and I know I rambled on, the point I'm making is after all that transpired, the United States Department of Defense decided we don't need all these 9 zillion million troops we got and all these weapons we got and all these missiles. We don't need as many as we have. And they said, hey, look, if anybody wants to, decide they want to be a civilian, we will pay you. We will pay you. You still get your honorable discharge. I was in the Pentagon. When that came up, I was working in the Pentagon. And I said, you know what, James, you spent your whole life affiliated with the Air Force. I was born into the Air Force.
Yes.
The year I went in, 1979, is the same year my dad got out. So
he just picked up the ball.
I just picked up the ball. I said, you know what? I've never been a regular guy. I want to know what it feels like to be a regular guy. So when they offered that buyout, I signed up and got my honorable discharge from the Pentagon and became a regular guy.
Okay. I guess you're proud of your accomplishments, right?
Yeah. You know what? The Air Force, I love being an Air Force brat. That's what they call you when you're a child, a military child in a military family. They call you a military brat. So I enjoyed being an Air Force brat, and I enjoyed my time on active duty. I really did. I got a chance to probably see places and go places that I otherwise would never have been able to afford to go if I had to pay for it out of my own pocket.
Exactly.
I got a chance to go to Germany, France, Sweden, Norway, Denmark, Japan, Philippines, Sweden. Britain.
Okay. So can we talk about your military training? What was it like?
Sure. My military training was basic training is basically 2 months of constant harassment. You know, it's like a mind thing. But I said, look, this is only 2 months. This is only 60 days. You know, it's almost like they show on TV. You know, where the guys, the drill sergeant or somebody's yelling, "Move it, yeah, you dirtbag, you slumbag, you're never gonna make it. You're not good enough for the Air Force." It's like 60 days of that. But I said to myself, I said, look, I can do this for 60 days. You know, we used to get up at 4 a.m. every morning at 4 a.m. They didn't have an actual guy blowing the trumpet. They had an audio recording.
Yeah.
And we'd be in the barracks sleep, right? Every morning at 4 a.m. It's called Reveille. At basic training, they play that music to wake you up. Immediately put on your exercise clothes. You go outside. You run a mile and a half. This is right soon. You don't go in there and wash your face and brush your teeth.
Right
as soon as they play that, you throw on your exercise clothes. You run outside, you get in formation, and then you start running. It's doing push-ups, sit-ups, pull-ups, stomach crunches.
I'm tired just thinking about it.
Yeah. So it still wasn't as severe as you have in the Marines, but it was severe enough.
For you.
Yeah.
Where were you trained?
But my basic training was at an Air Force base in upstate New York. Called Plattsburgh Air Force Base, New York. It was 60 miles south of Montreal, Canada. So it was like 18 miles from the Canadian border.
To where you were?
Yeah, it's where I had my basic training. And I was up there in the summertime of year, so it was beautiful that time of year. I'm glad I wasn't there in the winter because they get snow. It snows there in feet, not in inches in the winter. So I'm glad my basic training was in the summer months.
Exactly. I can.
Yeah.
What do you remember most about your training camp?
What I remember most was the 3 days we had to stay out in the woods in tents. We had to put up our own tents. We had to eat the nasty sea rations. I guess they call them something else now, but they had certain combat type food that they give you. So we had to go out in the woods for 3 days and live out in the woods for 3 days and make it on our own for 3 days and whatnot. They were probably off somewhere away, making sure none of us died or anything. But,
yeah, like a survival.
Right. That's what it was. It was basically a mini survival thing.
Okay.
For 3 nights out in the woods, out in the Adirondack Mountain woods. That's what I remember the most about basic training.
Okay. So after you finished your training, where did you go from there?
When I left there, I was assigned to Lowry Air Force Base in Colorado. I told you my major was communications, but the Air Force didn't give me a job that had anything to do with communications. They said we don't need, all they cared about as far as being an officer, right? To become an officer, they just wanted you to have a degree in something.
Yeah.
I'm like, the Air Force had a television network, just like these cameras and stuff you guys have in here. Okay, the Air Force had the Armed Forces, the Air Force, well, all the services. It was a multi-service organization called the Armed Forces Radio TV Network. Okay. And it was various guys from all different branches of the service, but you were assigned to the Armed Forces. Anyway, to make a long story short, I said, I want to do that.
They didn't give it
They said, no, we don't care. The needs of the Air Force come first. We don't have any openings in that. All those positions are filled, of course. Yes. All those are full. We don't need but we need guys who know how to take care of weapons. We need guys who can put fuses on missiles, bombs, rockets, ammunition, and put them on jets and fighters so they can go blow up stuff. That's what they trained me to do. So they sent me to Lowry Air Force Base in Colorado to learn all about Air Force, rockets, missiles, weapons, bombs, bullets, pyrotechnics, everything that goes boom. They sent me there for 6 months and taught me all about that stuff. When I left there, I was assigned to Robbins Air Force Base, Georgia. I was assigned to a B-52 unit. B-52 was a strategic bomber. Matter of fact, it's still being used, but it entered the Air Force in 1955. That aircraft entered the Air Force about the same time I was born. I was born in 1957. They're still flying it to this day. Obviously, there have been modifications, upgrades, computer stuff installed, but it's the same airframe that they built back in 1955. That was my first assignment at Robbins Air Force Base, Georgia. We had 19 B-52s and 19 tankers, which are the airplanes that fly in the air and refuel other airplanes while you're flying. Yes. In other words, if you're going from United States to Japan, you have to refuel. Rather than land, they send a tanker up while you're crossing the Pacific Ocean. They send a tanker up from Hickam Air Force Base, Hawaii. A tanker is basically an airplane that carries fuel, has like a hose at the back of it, and it refuels the other airplanes while you're flying.
In the air.
Yeah.
Oh, I did not
So we
know
had
that.
19 of those and 19 bombers. We had 19 bombers and 19 tankers at my first base. And my job was to be in charge of the guys who were loading the weapons onto the bombers.
Did you like it?
Well, I felt it was what I tell you, let me say it like this. I felt kind of conflicted
About it.
in that I knew that my job involved an item that's deadly
Yeah.
to human beings.
Yes.
I understood that aspect, but I also knew that the bad guys, the Soviet Union, okay, at that time, now there's only Russia. There is no Soviet Union. It got busted up, like I explained to you earlier.
Yes.
You know, they had been early 90s, late 80s. Soviet Union had Russia, Yugoslavia, Czechoslovakia, East Germany, Romania, Bulgaria, on and on. There were several countries that got swallowed up after World War II. Russia just swallowed them up after World War II when Hitler lost and created the Soviet Union. Okay, but I felt conflicted. But then again, I said, well, the Soviet Union has them, and they are our adversary. So how could we just sit here and not have anything, and they have
all of that?
Right. So I was kind of conflicted because I knew what my job had a direct combat related role. Like I said, we had guys in the Air Force that were manning TV cameras, like I explained to you earlier.
Yes.
My job was directly related to the wartime mission.
So you got to experience it directly.
Yeah. I never went to actual combat, and I'm glad. I mean, not because of I'm worried about myself. I'm just glad that as far as I'm concerned, I wish there was never any combat anywhere.
Yes.
I wish there had been no Vietnam. I wish there had been no World War II. I wish there had been none of that. But unfortunately, as long as there have been human beings on the planet, there has been conflict.
Yes,
I wish we could all resolve our issues without resorting to violence.
Yes.
But as long as there have been human beings since the days of Jesus Christ, even to this very day, there's always been violence and conflict. And I'm afraid, I hope I'm wrong, but I'm afraid it's, for the near term, as far as I can see, there's going to continue to be conflict. And you have to be ready just in case to protect your citizens. So I was proud that I felt that my job was important in protecting American citizens and making the Soviet Union think twice. Because they knew if they did something, we were going to retaliate. Yes. And it's like lose-lose. Because they were very powerful and we were very powerful. So all that's going to result in is lose-lose for everybody.
Yes.
It's going to be misery for them and misery for us. So,
tell me how you felt when you first traveled for the military, having to leave your family.
Well, when I first left, my parents, them being a military husband and wife, it wasn't the same as a family that maybe didn't have any military background at all, and their first son was going off.
So they were prepared for it?
They were prepared because they had been gallivanting all around the world. There. So when I went in, it wasn't, my mom kind of, oh, my son, he's a grown man. He's going now. My dad was like, oh, I'm proud of you, son. Yeah, oh, man, that's the way. That's the way you do it. But my dad, he was the first and only in his family. And he said they really just boo-hooed and doo-doo-dooed and please don't go when he went in. Yes. But when I went in, my mom and dad had been a military family for I was 21 when I got my little lieutenant bars, got my commission. So and I told you, I was born into the military. So my mom and dad had been military family my whole childhood, even to manhood. When I was 21, he was just getting out and I was going in. So it wasn't a whole lot of tears and all that. Now, the only separation that bothered me when I got married, my own wife, and then I had to be separated from my wife and my son. Sometimes I had to go on duty and stuff where, they couldn't go.
Yeah.
or we had to go to some deployment somewhere. And it, like they said, it's a deployment. You're gone for 2 months. You're gone for a month. Your family has to stay wherever you're living at, and you're going to Japan for a month, Korea for a month, whatever. And that's kind of hard. That's kind of hard. But my wife, she seemed to kind of enjoy it. She didn't come from a military background, but she seemed to really enjoy, not me being gone. She seemed to really enjoy my wife at the time. Rest in peace. She died in 2014, and I remarried. I remarried a couple of years ago, but she seemed to really enjoy us as a family going from place to place to place, because she grew up in Fayetteville, North Carolina, high school sweetheart, and had never really had an opportunity to really go anywhere, you know.
Yeah.
So she kind of I think she enjoyed it more than I did, you know, because it was brand new to her. I had done it as a child
A lot of times.
Yeah, I did it as a child, and I turned around and did it as an adult. So, yeah.
Okay, how did you get to your first deployment?
Well, let's see. The first deployment I went on was we took military aircraft, and I was on a KC-10. A KC-10 is an aircraft that can refuel the other airplanes, but it also has a big cargo compartment. You got the pilots in there flying it. Then in the back, it's a military aircraft, but in the back, it's got a whole bunch of room. You can put in what we call paratrooper seats.
Okay.
And just like the name sounds like, they're the kind of seats you put in there that when guys decide they're going to parachute out of an airplane. Basically, it's like looks like net. It looks like a lawn chair made out of netting, and it just folds down from the wall. And we sat on those, and we went on a deployment to South Dakota. That was my very first deployment when I left my base in Georgia, and we went on a 2-week deployment to South Dakota. That was my very first deployment.
Okay. Did you know anyone else? Oh, I'm sorry.
Oh, no, go ahead.
Did you know anyone else that was being deployed to the same location you were?
Well, there were several guys that were in my unit. So it wasn't just me alone. It was like me plus another 9 guys from the unit I was assigned to in Georgia. All 9 of us had to go to South Dakota for an exercise in South Dakota.
Okay.
Yeah.
And you enjoyed it?
Well, South Dakota's kind of different.
From
It's a lot different than here. It's not much there.
Oh.
There's a lot of wide open spaces and tumbleweeds and jackrabbits and just kind of not a whole lot there. It was different.
What were you expecting?
Yeah, well, I kind of knew what to expect. I grew up in North Carolina, and I'm from the East Coast area where everything's green. But once you hit South Dakota, everything starts turning kind of brown. There's not much.
It's okay. Could you please describe your initial duties when you were deployed?
Yeah, my duties when I was deployed was the same thing I was trained in when I was in Colorado. The same thing trained me. My duties were to make sure that the weapons were properly loaded onto the aircraft. That was my job. Missiles, rockets, bombs, bullets, you name it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Can you share what you remember most about your experience?
Yeah, I can. I think what I remember most. What I remember most, unfortunately, is the morning I got a call at 4 a.m. in Georgia saying report to work immediately. There's a fire on the runway. And I don't know why they called me. There wasn't no weapons involved, but they just called everybody in. And when I got there, it was like the largest fire. I mean, you could see it well before you got to the base. All you saw was the sky glowing. And I was coming down the road in my car because they didn't tell us anything. They just said, everybody report to work immediately. This is not an exercise. This is not an exercise. Report to work now. Back then, we didn't have cell phones. You had to actually pick up go to your kitchen.
Yes.
And the phone was on the table and said, Captain Smith speaking. Captain Smith, this is not an exercise. Report to duty immediately. So I'm thinking, oh, we're going to war.
Oh.
Because you don't know.
Yes.
He said, this is not an exercise. Because usually if it's an exercise, they'll say, the phone will ring. You say, Captain Smith speaking. They'll say, exercise, exercise, exercise. Report to your unit immediately.
Then you know.
They said, Captain Smith, report to your duty immediately. This is not an exercise. That's all they said. They didn't say there was an aircraft on fire, and they just said this is not exercise. I said, oh, we finna go.
Yeah, I can't imagine
Yeah.
what was going through your
Yeah, I
head.
said, we're being attacked by the Soviet Union. We finna launch the nuclear missiles and stuff, you know. But what it was one of the B-52 bombers I mentioned to you earlier, which is an aircraft, large aircraft that carries missiles, bombs, bullets, had caught fire. And I was coming down the road, and you could see the sky glowing from miles away. And I was like, what's that glow? What is that? Anyway, and when I got to the base, all I saw was the most horrific, tallest, highest, widest blaze I've ever seen in my life. And that's because the aircraft fuel is so volatile. The fuel is so volatile, you know, just like on a commercial airline. If one of those things catches fire, that aircraft fuel is so flammable. It's not like regular gasoline. Gasoline in your car is highly flammable.
Yes.
Of course, you throw a match in that tank in your car, the car's gonna blow up. But aircraft fuel is even more flammable than that because of the octane that aircraft requires a lot higher.
Yes.
You know, the physical. I don't want to get into chemistry and all that. Start talking like a chemist. But the properties of aircraft fuel are such that this is more dynamic because you got to have a lot of power to get them big airplanes off the ground.
Off the floor, yeah.
So you can imagine what happens when that stuff catches fire. But that was very, very, very scary morning. I don't know why, and I guess something like that would obviously stick out in your mind because that's kind of like a horrific event.
Yeah.
And one guy, unfortunately, not anybody I knew, but unfortunately there was one fatality. And that was a guy that was working on the aircraft at the time.
Oh.
They said something he did, some kind of thing, a tool or something he dropped or something, and then the aircraft wasn't grounded properly. I don't know if you're familiar with electrical principles and all that. Anyway, when you're doing and a lot of electrical work, when you're doing something, the item you're working on has to be what we call grounded, which basically means if there's an electrical charge, the charge will run from the device that you're working on or aircraft into the ground wire, into the ground.
Okay.
Just like that's why they said everything's got to be grounded. It's just basically, it's basically similar to a lightning rod. Are you familiar with a lightning rod? A lightning rod on a person's home.
Yes.
If you have a lightning rod on a house, electricity, lightning hits it. That's electricity. The lightning rod makes sure that electricity takes a path through the house into the ground. Instead of
hitting the house.
Right. Instead of knocking the house on fire.
Okay.
So basically a ground for aircraft purposes does the same thing as that a lightning rod does. And they said this guy didn't have the aircraft properly grounded. He caused a spark with some kind of tool, and there were some fuel vapors present, a whole lot of vapors, and the vapors exploded, and the aircraft caught fire. And he was an aircraft maintenance guy, and he ended up being a fatality. So that's what sticks out in my mind the most, unfortunately.
Yes.
But oftentimes it is the tragic things that, for obvious reasons, stick out the most.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Were you able to stay in contact with your family and friends back home?
I was able to stay in regular contact with my mom and dad, my brothers and sisters. We did go to almost all the family reunions when I was stationed in the United States. I think the only time we didn't go to the family reunions was when me and my wife and my son, I was stationed in Great Britain for 3 years. And we didn't come back then. But most of the time, I was able to stay in pretty regular contact with my kin people. Yeah.
Oh. Did you feel like you were missing out on anything?
No.
In your family?
No. I guess because of my childhood background.
So
I guess because of me being a military brat, I didn't have that missing out feeling that probably a child that had not been a military brat was in a family that was just, you were born in Capitol Heights, Maryland, and you grew up in Capitol Heights, Maryland, and you went to school in Capitol Heights, Maryland, and your mom and dad grew up in Capitol Heights, Maryland. If I'd been raised like that, I probably would have felt like I'm missing out on friendships, stability, long-term relationships. But the fact as a child, I was already used to moving around and very adaptable and all that. When I went in, and me and my wife and my son, even though my wife didn't travel a whole lot coming up, she didn't seem like she felt like she was missing anything. No, I definitely didn't feel like I was missing anything because I grew up in it.
Yes.
Yeah.
What did you do for relaxation and recreation when you were not on duty?
Oh, I like when I'm not on duty, and to this very day, I love to listen to smooth jazz. I love jogging.
Okay.
I love, I think those are my two favorite things, smooth jazz, and I love exercise. Exercise just keeps my head clear. It just kind of helps me to go, I don't know, something about all that sweat and
Yes, the adrenaline.
those endorphins kick in.
Mm-hmm.
After you get to about your third mile, you get that second wind, and it's like whatever's bothering you,
Shake it off.
it just comes right off. They say you can't run away from your problems. Yes, you can.
Okay.
You go jogging for about 4 or 5 miles, all that stuff just rolls right off you.
Okay. Did you do anything special for good luck?
I did not.
You did not?
No, I know a lot of military guys have superstitions and things they like to do to kind of make sure things go right. Yeah, I understand. I'm familiar with that.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of guys they always do whatever. You know,
Yes.
they put the right sock on first, always, or they brush their teeth with their left hand because that's good luck. And you know, if I go into combat, I want to make sure I brush my teeth with my left hand because that's my good luck thing. But I didn't have any good luck things. I just prayed to my God and said, God, please watch over us and watch over my family and watch over my unit and watch over my friends and watch over. Please keep us from having any wars. The only war that transpired while I was on active duty, I just missed Vietnam. Vietnam, I believe, ended in '75 under President Richard Nixon.
Okay.
Richard Nixon was president when it finally ended, and I finished high school in '75. I did have to register for the draft as soon as I turned. There was a draft back then. They had a draft. So when I turned 16, I was required to register for the draft. But by the time I turned 18, Nixon had already ended the Vietnam. So I just missed that one. Then I went to college and I came and went in the Air Force in '79. But the only combat action that occurred was where was I at? When the first Iraq War, when George, I get my Bushes mixed up. H.W. Bush.
Okay.
Not the most recent Bush. Not the Bush that was president right before Obama.
Oh, George?
George Bush was right before President Obama.
Yeah.
Okay. Way before him, his dad was president. Herbert Walker Bush, H.W. Bush. To make a long story short, H.W. Bush, the dad, was president when we had the first war in Iraq, Desert Storm.
Okay.
Desert Storm. I was on active duty when that happened. I was at the Pentagon. I was assigned to the Pentagon when Desert Storm happened in '91 or '92, and it only lasted a few months. Colin Powell was chairman of the Joint Chiefs. Colin Powell, the black guy that was the Secretary of State that died.
I'm not too familiar.
Okay. But anyway, make a long story short, I know some folks. These folks out there in TV land know what I'm talking about. But anyway, at the time, Colin Powell was chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. Mm-hmm. George Bush's dad, H.W. Bush, was the president of the United States. So the only combat I was aware of occurred when I was at the Pentagon. I was working at Air Force headquarters in the Pentagon, and that one only lasted a couple of months. That was when Saddam Hussein invaded Kuwait, and we went over there to liberate Kuwait. But it only lasted a couple of months, and Iraq surrendered. We ended up going back into Iraq under the Bush that you were talking about.
Yes.
We first went under George Bush's dad.
Yes.
We invaded then. And then after George Bush's dad, I believe Bill Clinton became president. Then after Bill Clinton became president, next after him was George Bush. After him was Obama. But anyway, to make a long story short, we went to Iraq under Dad Bush, and we went to Iraq again under the son Bush. I got out in '92, so I wasn't involved at all when we went in under the son Bush. But I was at the Pentagon when we went in under the Dad Bush. I was assigned to the Pentagon.
Okay. Now you said you managed the weapons and all. Did you have any special weapons training?
I did.
What was that like?
Well, I can't really discuss it.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's like that.
Okay.
Yeah.
So when exactly did your war service end?
It ended September Well, I wasn't actually. Let me rephrase that because I don't want to mislead you. I wasn't actually in combat because your question was when did my war service end? Okay.
When did your service end?
Okay, my service to the United States Air Force ended in September of 1992. I was on active duty when we were in combat, but I was never actually in a combat zone. Like I said, during the time of the Iraq thing I described, I was actually in the Pentagon. I wasn't in Iraq. I was in the Pentagon.
Were there issues with readjusting back to the civilian lifestyle?
Yeah.
How did you get
One thing I told my current wife, and I told my previous wife, and rest in peace, and I told my dad. I still have my dad. Thank goodness he's still with. He's 85. He's 85 years old. And anyway, when I first got out, I told him and my wife and everybody I could. I said, you know what? This is different. And the reason I got out, I told my dad, was that's all I knew was Air Force, Air Force, Air Force, Air Force. That's all I knew. That's all I knew.
Yeah.
I was a child. That's all I saw. As soon as I became 21, I went in. I said, Dad, you know what? I want to see what it feels like to be a regular guy. And it's different. I mean, it was different because I was used to everything regimented, highly structured by the numbers, 1, 2, 3, A, B, C. And I got out in the civilian world, got a regular civilian job, and employees were telling the boss, I'm not doing that.
Yeah, that must have been a shock.
Oh, yeah. I was like, Because all my life was, yes, sir, no, sir, I got it, sir, aye, sir, salute, yes, sir.
Yes.
I mean, obviously, as long as it wasn't nothing illegal or unsafe. But it'd be like, I need you to go over there and do so-and-so and so-and-so. And employees like, I'm not doing that.
Oh, I didn't know you could turn.
I'm not doing that. You made me do that yesterday. You need to have Joe do that. You don't ever make Joe do it.
Oh.
So I hadn't seen that.
Like
before.
a culture shock for you.
Yeah, it was a culture shock. Trust me, it's a lot more. And I'm not saying the Air Force is better because it's to me it was just like night and day. I felt like it was a whole lot more freedom of choice and action and be whoever you think you are. To be in the military and in the Air Force, all the services, they want conformity.
Yes.
They want conformity. They want conformity. And I'm not saying there's probably a need for that because we're controlling things that kill people.
Yeah.
We're controlling things that destroy buildings, knock down skyscrapers, devastate people's lives, burn up whole neighborhoods. We're controlling that stuff.
Yeah.
So it probably wouldn't be a good idea to have a bunch of mavericks where everybody does their own thing, do whatever you want. Now, out here in the real world, out here in the regular civilian world, I don't think conformity is what you want. I think you're better off out here in the real world as far as how the real world works, civilian world works, with having variety
of opinions. Yeah.
I think as a result of all the different variety and diversity you have, you end up with better everything. But that won't work in an environment where you're controlling violence. You can't have everybody doing their own thing. You can't do that. So it's a big difference. It was a big adjustment for me because all I knew my whole life was Air Force brat, Air Force grown man. That's all I knew.
Wow. What do you think was the most valuable thing you got from your service?
Oh, work ethic, self-discipline.
That's a good thing to have.
Yeah. I got I drive my wife crazy. She says, "Why don't you sit down?" And I do relax. I told you I like smooth jazz. I like jogging, but she thinks I got to plan everything. She says, "You got to sometimes just let things happen. Just let things let life come to you." She says, "Why you got to just plan everything out? You plan out the whole year. Well, this is May, this is June, and on this day and this day, and then da. I got it all lined up. Blah 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 blah." And she's like, she likes it. She says, "I like that about you. You're very structured." Then again, I don't like that about you. You're too structured.
Too structured. You need to be flexible at times.
But you asked me what the Air Force did for me, and I'm going to tell you, I'm very pleased and proud to say that I feel that it gave me a lot of self-discipline and a great work ethic. I've never been afraid of work. Work did not scare me. mental work, physical work.
That's good.
Yeah, I never ran away from work. And I think I have a lot of self-control and patience and just my outlook. I think it
Life in
helped. I think it
general.
helped. I think it helped broaden my outlook because I got a chance to go here, there, and see all types of different people. I know diversity is a big thing now, but the military in general. You're a young lady. Dale probably knows what I'm talking about. Your producer. Your producer probably knows what I'm referring to. Way back in the day, okay, diversity is a real big subject now. But way back in the day, in the 1950s and 60s, and Martin Luther King days, and Malcolm X and all that, okay,
Yes.
the military, for some reason, has always been slightly ahead of society in general in race relations. The military has always been ahead. They integrated the army in 1940 something because of Hitler, well before America integrated anything else. And the point I'm trying to make is, as a result of my dad being in the military, I was around all different races, even in the '60s when I was like 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 years old, because we lived on an Air Force base. The Air Force had already said,
Yes.
we are integrated. I didn't have to live in the black section of the base. There was no such thing. There was no such thing in base housing as this is the black section
Black.
on the base where the black people got to live, and this is the white part of the base. Our
Yes.
next door neighbors were white. This is 1966.
Yeah.
And Dale, I think your producer may be from the north, but I'm sure up north in Detroit and places like that, there was a lot of segregation. But one thing the Air Force did for me early in my life, I learned about diversity early. Early.
Early.
Man, I
Yeah.
was around Asians, whites, other blacks.
That's a good thing.
Early. Like I said, well before busing. You didn't have to worry about busing. But back when I was in school, they had to actually redo all the school districts, and they were busing the black kids into white neighborhoods, and they were busing the white kids out of the white neighborhoods into the black, and all that was done to get the schools integrated.
Integrated.
Because
Yes.
you had all black schools, you had all white schools. So they they started busing people zillions of miles away from where they lived at just to get the schools integrated.
Integrated.
But I was already integrated because I was going to school on the Air Force bases.
Yes.
I was already around other races. So
You
you
were
asked me
used to
what
it.
benefit the Air Force gave me. I mentioned self-discipline. I mentioned work ethic, but I need to also mention that I learned how to get along with all different folks, all different backgrounds, all different nationalities, ethnicities. I learned that very early in my life.
That is good.
Thanks to the Air Force. Thanks
That
to the
is
Air Force.
good. Now, speaking of diversity, you said you got to travel around a lot. Did you have any food or culture that you liked or enjoyed the most?
Oh, good question. I was in Britain, Great Britain, for 3 years, but I don't know about now, but back then, trust me, the British cuisine back then, 1983 to 1986. Me and my family were stationed at Great Britain for 3 years. We were there, and back then, British cuisine was very bland. Very bland. I don't. It's probably a lot better now. London. They
Yes.
probably done got very cosmopolitan and international chefs and all that. But back then, it was fish and chips, meat pies, Yorkshire pudding. All of it tasted awful to me. So you asked me favorite cuisine. Well, I just told you how that wasn't it.
That
That
wasn't
wasn't it. My favorite cuisine, believe it or not, even though I traveled to Japan and all them other places I told you, my favorite food is American Southern.
Soul food.
Barbecue spare ribs, potato salad, collard greens, mac and cheese, cheesecake, carrot cake, banana pudding, sweet potatoes, candied yams.
For very valid reasons. I see it.
That's my favorite cuisine in the whole wide world.
I love it too. Okay. What message would you like to leave for the future generations that will watch this?
The message I'd like to leave for future generations that will watch this is, boy, I like that question. Let me get my thoughts
Think
together.
about it.
Yeah, let me get my thoughts together. Future generations, just do it. Just do it. Don't make excuses. Don't make alibis. Don't feel sorry for yourself. I know life ain't fair. You're right. It ain't.
It's not.
It's not. Never has been. Never will be. But you know what? You got to stay in the fight. You got to stay in the ring. Never throw in the towel. Always put forth an effort. I tell you what, as long as a person's putting forth an effort, I don't care if they lose. I don't care if they don't win.
Mm-hmm.
But what bothers me is when a person refuses to put forth an effort. I used to tell my son that. He's 40. I'm 65. My son is 43. But when he was a young man, oh, Dad, it's not fair. Life is too hard. And why? I said, look, as long as you're making an effort and you continue to make efforts, I'm going to back you.
Yeah.
You may stumble and completely fall flat on your face, but never, ever, ever say, I quit. No, it ain't fair. No, it ain't fair. Never has been fair. Never going to be fair.
Will be.
Never will be. Some people get favors that they don't deserve.
Mm-hmm.
Some people get mistreatment that they don't deserve. But you got to stay in the fight, stay in the ring. Never, ever, ever throw in the towel. Never throw in the towel. You may lose, but don't throw in the towel.
Yes.
As long as a person continues to strive, I don't care how many times they get knocked down, they're gonna always have my support by the fact that they're constantly trying.
Trying to do it.
Keep on trying. I don't care. You keep trying till you 99 and nothing don't never work. You still keep trying.
Now, is there anything you feel like we haven't discussed or you want to add something?
I don't want to add anything. I probably have talked. Wow, time goes fast when you're having fun. I know I've enjoyed. I need to thank your producers, and I need to thank you. Everybody's life is a story.
Yeah.
And mine's no better than anybody else's, and mine is no less than anybody else's. I feel like everybody's got a story to tell. I'm pleased that you and your producer took the time to want to hear mine. But basically, I don't have any. I told my wife I don't have any ego. I don't have any ego. I thank God for everything that He's blessed me with, and I thank God every day for the fact that I got a roof over my head. I've been gainfully employed. I got food to eat. Electricity's on. The car's running. It's got overpriced gas in it. but I one thing I don't have, one thing I'm not. I don't. To me, every human being is important, and every human being should be treated that any human being deserves, no matter what their station is in life, no matter what's in their bank account. Mm-hmm. I believe every human being should be treated with the dignity that every human being deserves. So, but I appreciate you interviewing me, and I appreciate your producers for having me. I really do. I'm just humbled and flattered and very humbled that your producer and yourself really wanted to take the time to listen to me.
We appreciate it. I mean, you put in the work to get here, so you deserve it.
Well, thank you. Like I said, I'm not no better than nobody else or less, but I appreciate you guys at least finding me worth interviewing.
Okay.